Anybody who looks at China as just like a pure aggressor in that case, and they're, the military is going to be their first option for how they do this thing, has really misread China at a pretty foundational level. That is a smart country. The Communist Party of China is very well aware that taking things in a nasty, brutal campaign of invasion is going to be costly, fraught, full of dangers for themselves. It's going to obviously go slower than anybody expects. Look at Ukraine, right? We're into day 500 and some, or sorry, 700 and something. I don't keep good enough track, but everybody thought that was going to be over in a matter of weeks, and we're seeing that drag on for a very long time. It's not going to be quick. It's going to be fraught with possibility for foreign, not interference, but the influence of foreign forces that they can't fully account for. And the Chinese are a very arithmetic and structured approach, right? When you say that you're a Marxist, in the case that the Chinese do, Marxism is not only an economic theory, it's a political theory, but it's also essentially a structure of analysis. So they are going to do the dialectic process. They're going to make sure that they've considered antithesis and synthesis in their analysis, and they're going to really try to get as good of an estimate as they can of what's going to be right. None of that matters. What does matter is that they need to be ready to credibly indicate to the world that they can do what they've said they're going to do. And the United States needs to be ready to credibly indicate to the world in concert with allies, partners, and a coalition that we can blunt that effect. Or we can at least ensure that the consequences and the cost of that are so dire that it was ultimately not worth the prize in the first place. As a weapons officer, you are frequently confronted with circumstances where you may not see the grand strategic rationale behind what's going on, but this is a long chain with a lot of links, and your job is to stand as one of those links in that critical chain so that your tactical excellence yields an operational effect, which yields and enables a strategic outcome. I don't know what's going to happen. I do think that we need to be able to credibly deny that. When it relates to the kind of spirit and culture that you're talking about, I think that the aviation environment has really become a little bit more technocratic over time, right? These aircraft get more complicated, and system managers really tend to thrive and excel. System managers and bureaucratic managers tend to thrive and excel as squadron leaders, right? They know how to make best use of teams. And I just described, right? ACE is going to be a team of teams activities to make sure that we can get this stuff right. There is a personality that excels in that, and there are personalities that excel in kind of the risk-taking aspects. Sometimes we get it exactly right, and you're blessed with a Jimmy Doolittle, who was just a master of strategic risk-taking. This is a guy that understood how to get the most out of those risks, but he also understood how to backcast that into operational art. I think that's rare. I think that we're rare when we get blessed to have somebody like that. It's kind of like the big wing debate for the RAF, right? We're rare when we get somebody who sees both the risk management of doing small squadron sends versus the big wing. We're rare. I do think, though, that it's in the pendulum swing of preferring systems managers and able bureaucratic leaders who are able to tamp down tendencies for disruption that are often associated with more risk-accepting, risk-taking activities. We see potentially I think that there's the potential that we want to avoid moving so far down that we lose the ability to find the person who's ready to go be Jimmy Doolittle's wingman when the time is right and it's time to launch the raid off the USS Hornet, right? If we lose that kind of appetite for risk accepting, then I think that we're at risk that when that is really the most appropriate thing, and that systems manager, talented bureaucratic leader is ready to go do that, if he doesn't have a fleet of wingmen on his left and on his right who are willing to go do the high risk mission, then do you really have anything that's credible medium and high risk tactics anymore? High risk is I am willing to risk forced destruction because that is worth more than that is what my target destruction is worth to me. Medium is I'm willing to like exchange 1-to-1 loss ratios with my adversary, and we have a long a long pedigree of really operating at low risk. Mission losses are unacceptable, or mission losses are only acceptable at historically common rates. Versus like, no, dude, we're gonna go trade. We're gonna go trade forces, or I'm going to accept that hitting the, I don't I hope that the risk was lower for the B2 guys, but that is not a low risk activity. That is hats off to those B2 crews, because that was, holy cow, man, that was some real risk acceptance. So I say that by way of, we never want to lose that. And I think that part of culturally where we need to really walk a balance is, it's kind of like kids in elementary schools, who can't sit still very well. Are you going to label them as a discipline problem, or are you going to figure out how to get the energy out of them so that they can then, better comply with the classroom rules without beating the, the fact that they're just being a rambunctious young person, right? So I think it's a really hard thing to balance, and I think that our culture needs to keep in mind that I know that risk taking is sometimes going to get us in trouble. It's sometimes going to lead to somebody coming up with an awesome tactic and they thought they had planned it all through, and you know what, turns out blue 4 wasn't able to hang with it, and he busted the floor by 700 feet and almost smacked the Nellis Desert. And somebody's going to stand in front of the wing commander's carpet and say, god damn it, guys, what were you thinking when you did that? But if we don't preserve at least a little bit of that, we're not going to get the god damn, guys, I don't know how you came up with that, but that was fucking brilliant. We're going to miss having that moment as well. So I hope that as we continue to train people who are systems experts, and they are integration experts, and they are tactical experts, and they do think about how to successfully run, they do think with an operational perspective, how do they run a large team to go after large operational objectives. I hope that we have not forgotten that 40-second voids are still out there. And the first medals of honor for the Air Force were folks who were willing to crash it in rather than let that Korean tank, roll over U.S. forces. And so we still need a little bit of that. I think it's one of the hardest things to do. And I've had great leaders. I have absolutely had great leaders who had me on the carpet, dressed me down for tactical decisions that turned out to be higher risk than I had fully anticipated. And then after a good dressing down, sent me on my way and told me, go forward and sin no more, as opposed to doing something that was a little bit more career inhibiting. I hope that we can continue to do that, because the leader does that at some personal risk to themselves. That system falls apart when they get called on their boss's carpet. And I heard you had a 4-ship where number 4 bottomed out at 200 feet on a threat reaction because number 1 was trying some crazy ass new tactic. What kind of a shit show are you running over there? That is a real risk. So I hope that we keep on resetting ourselves to that by occasionally pulling books off the shelf that remind us, it turns out I need a couple of people who are just willing to go eat a big sandwich of risk and do something crazy, because the need for adventure is boiling in their veins. So that was a long answer, but what's China going to do? No idea. Whatever they do, I need both. History of the Air Force is full with both the risk taker as well as the systems manager and the organizational leader. And I hope that we don't decide that we've identified the template of success with such confidence that we begin excluding anybody who doesn't narrowly fit it, because then I think we'll be a force that actually lacks diversity of perspective and diversity of viewpoints that realistically results in large monolithic vulnerabilities of groupthink.
If you enjoyed this clip and want more, you can go to 10percenttrue.com, hit subscribe, you get early ad-free access to all my content. Appreciate your support.